philosophy in building a team is everybody is an equal part of the puzzle. I'm not a cookie cutter hirer. I don't find CSMs to have this list. Every hire is unique because I'm looking for who's going to augment the team and add an expertise that the team don't have so that they can also come in and fit really nicely into that team orientation and go, hey, I have this superpower, and then recognize those around them that have this other superpower that they could all lean on so that you don't have everybody kind of being competitive and fighting for who's going to get this or this. Is they all recognize that, hey, I have my strengths, they have their strengths, and we can work together to do something really great.
Spotlight, brought to you by CSM Focus, where we refine customer success, uniting GTM teams across North America.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spotlight CSM Focus podcast. I'm here with Star Hofer, COO from AMK Media. Welcome, Star.
Thank you, Emma. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, Star, can you tell the audience a little bit about your background?
I've been in professional services and tech startup my entire career, which has been great. Not to totally age myself, but 24 years been in the corporate space in tech startup. And I think I'm on startup number 6. So gone through a few, and the shortest term I've been with a company has been 3 years.
Wow.
So generally, I'm at an organization for a while in order to drive change. And so I've built multiple organizations in customer success, but also in professional services that don't get the love they should in this space. So shout out to our professional services folks that are really also driving customer success. One would even say they were the catalyst that started the customer success movement. And so with that, I'm at a company today called AKA New Media, or Raisin. And we are in the fundraising space. So really we're supporting non-for-profit foundations and charities so that they can raise money in order to further their causes.
This is amazing that you're working for a non-for-profit organization and help them build their thing. You mentioned you've been in this space for long and always been building. So I'm so if you're interested in your insights in building team from ground up professional service and the CS side. Can you tell us a little bit more from the last 3 times you had built?
Sure. One might think I'm a little crazy because there's a lot of pain that comes in building and a lot of work that comes into it. But I find that, the real learning that happens is through a lot of that pain. And oftentimes, a lot of time when you're building, there's a lot of similar attributes that surface from one to the other. So when building a team for CS, some of the things that I kind of look at is, where am I starting? What's the evolution that the company is in? And so understanding the business first really kind of tells me like, all right, well, what is the maturity that's required for a CS team? For example, if the product's new, and there's a lot of bumps and the product is still building and flying at the same time, the role of your CSMs are going to be quite different than someone where your product might be well established and they're not building and flying anymore. And they might be more on past that adoption stage where they're truly like driving that value and really focused on going, okay, well, what problem is our product solving? And then really getting ahead of that. So when I go to build and construct a CS org, I look at like, where's the company at from a product perspective, from a maturity of an organization? Is it a recent acquisition and there's like new vision, more new life, and they're rebuilding within a build that's already old or new? Are they really just a VC company that is building and flying and really trying to make a mark but grow at a ridiculous acceleration of 100+% year over year? So I kind of start there. Then once I start there, then I have a bit of an idea of what type of attributes and what is the essence of what CS needs to be for the next 2 to 3 years. And because knowing that the company is going to evolve past the stage they're in, or hopefully, because why would you want to be stagnant? Then in that case, it's like, okay, well, let's build out a 3-year plan. Because the first year is really where you're disrupting the most. Year 2 is where you're seeing if your hypothesis really made any sense and where you need to course correct. And then year 3 is where you see the magic happen. And if you're not there for the year 3, you did all of that work without seeing all the great stuff come out at year 3.
So I know different stages as a company. What do you see the common challenge through all 3 times?
It's a tough one because product is the key input. I wouldn't actually say it's the common challenge. It's necessary. What is the current philosophy of the product? What does the organization think of clients or customers as a whole? Like, is it a value proposition for them, or is it a means to an end? And so those are different philosophies when you're building a CS org. And you do have your senior leadership team that says customer success, but they don't really mean it. What they're really saying is guard the numbers, and you're the keeper of retention numbers. That's it. But you're not really driving value for clients. That's not really the ultimate goal. So that's one commonality I see. And then you see ones that are on the complete other scale where they're like, no, like we want to make sure the clients are truly getting the value, and maybe we need to rechange our value proposition. Maybe our ICP is wrong. Like they're really challenging themselves to understand going, are they serving the client or the customer the right way? So those are the two things. And then product, how does product fit in that? Like, is product ahead of that, behind that, buggy, non-buggy, building and flying? And so that's the other key thing that kind of fits in there, and you got to figure out where they're at.
So make buddies with your product team first.
Make friends with your, understand where the product is at. And then the other thing is really understand from the ELT level is what is the role of CS. And sometimes if you are the one that's trying to bring customer success at that level, meaning it already exists, but they don't really do CS as you want it to truly be, like the client value driven versus like the protector of the numbers or the realm, if you will, then you have to know that going in there, because it's a different political game, which means you're building a completely different team. So those are the things that I tend to look at when I'm going in there. Is just I just want to understand what type of team am I building, and then what is my role, right? Because it's hard if I went into an organization where they're in that type of role where you're protector of the numbers, and I'm wanting to come in there and talk just about client value, not going to fit very well initially. And so it means you either have to adapt or not, and then slowly take them on the journey, if you will. That's a tougher game than be that protector of the numbers and kind of go down that path initially and then build some credibility and then start to make that swing. So it's just kind of understanding where it's at. Personally, it just helped with my mental sanity. So I didn't want to scream at somebody going, what are you doing? Why'd you bring in that crazy client that's not going to go, or customer that's not going to get any value out of this? Because recognizing where the evolution of the company's at. Company might need these crazy clients that to come into the door to understand who the fit is first.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We talked actually at the CCO school yesterday. We're talking about what if we have to take on that crazy client? What do you do to communicate that back to the board or executive team?
Yeah. You have to, if you're in a newer company and you're building and flying, like, you're just coming out of maybe seed Series A company, you need to get customers in, right? Because the whole point is if your go-to-market strategy is working, but you don't know unless you sell. And if the product's still evolving and still being built, poor sales team doesn't know how they're not really the problem either. So everybody's really just trying to find the fit. And if every team doesn't have any level of empathy of going, all right, well, are they fit? Are they not a fit? And truly give it a try, you won't know. Because if it is a true failure, great. Why? Because that's then going to feed back into your go-to-market strategy and say, okay, well, these are what the ICP is not, and here's why, or here's how the product needs to evolve so that this client can be the ICP if this is who you're wanting to go after. So yeah, sometimes you've got to go after those clients, even though it's painful, it hurts, but you can't have too many of those. That's the balance, right? Every client you have or customer you have coming in can't be that, because my goodness, the poor CSMs that are working on that, or the leadership team in customer success, will get burnt out because they are 2 to 3 times more work.
Yeah. So how long would you say enough is enough? Like you say, look at quarterly.
I think it's probably a ratio, right? Like I think it's like, again, it depends on the evolution of the company and where they're at and some of the commitments that's made from a board level, right? And decisions made. Sometimes you can take like maybe one a quarter. Depends on how long your implementation or your onboarding cycle is. But depends on when the customer sees the value. So there's a lot of variables that's in there. But you could take one a quarter, maybe one every 6 months, if it's like one that's really consuming and takes somebody out 1-to-1 ratio, one client to one person, and that person's no longer able to help other clients because they're such a drain. But yeah, it all depends. I think it's not terrible to have one. Is just trying to recognize if it's a stretch in the right direction or stretch in the wrong direction. Because if a product is still building, then you just want to be stretching the direction the product is going, not the direction the product is not going. And if you know for sure the product is not going that direction, that's when enough is enough. Because that's when you say, hey, this is not the right fit. We're never going to go that way. So cut your losses. Then go after the ones that are reaching just ahead of where you're at. And that's okay. Painful, but okay.
Oh, that's great. Let's go back to the building the team.
Sure.
You talk about where, so what's the next step? Now you know the vision, know the product. Next, what's your next step up you will do of building the team?
The first thing I would do is kind of do an audit. Who do I have on the team? What's the audit? What's the superpowers of everyone that's on the team? One of the things that I've been very blessed and fortunate to be is very observant. And so when I have individuals on the team, they all have certain skills, whether they recognize it or not, that I will see. And I'm like, oh, okay, so they're great at this, this, and this. And then I'll do that across the team to figure out who's there. My philosophy in building a team is everybody is an equal part of the puzzle. I'm not a cookie cutter hire. I don't find CSMs to have this list. Every hire is unique because I'm looking for who's going to augment the team and add an expertise that the team don't have so that they can also come in and fit really nicely into that team orientation and go, hey, I have this superpower, and then recognize those around them that have this other superpower that they could all lean on so that you don't have everybody kind of being competitive and fighting for who's going to get this or this. Is they all recognize that, hey, I have my strengths, they have their strengths, and we can work together to do something really great. So once I do that audit, then I tend to put together a bit of a competency structure. And so the competencies really focus, and for those that haven't worked on competencies is like it's taking your skills, your abilities, and your knowledge, and you combine that into what a competency is. So another way I like to look at it, it's the how to the what. So if the what is the skill that's there, it's like, well, how do you apply that skill? And that's the competency. And so I build a bit of that competency structure that's there. What are the key core competencies I need in each individual that's here on the team so that everyone has this baseline. And then I augment from there. And then look for a specific competency that might be unique to that individual that I'm hiring for. Then from there, I continue to grow from there depending on tiering level or segmentation that needs to happen. It all depends on how big the organization is and how big the team is.
Do you use any personality tests or ocean scores?
No, I don't believe in them really. I think they're cool. I think sometimes they get it right and sometimes they don't. I know I'm not always the same person. Some morning I'm a crabby little bitch when I get up in the morning, and I like that about myself. And the next morning I'm as sweet as can be, and you can just wrap me in a blanket and a hug, and I'm happy. But when I fill out those tests, sometimes I could fill it in one day and fill it the next day, and I get two completely different results. And so I'm not the biggest fan of the personality test because it's like a resume. A resume never tells you the story of who you are. You tell the story of who you are. And so I kind of focus more on the people element of it and who they are and who they're striving to be versus what paper might tell me.
That's great because there's just many people use that as part of the hiring process. And I wonder, how do you get to that level of outside of just looking at your resume?
Yeah. Some of the best people I've ever hired, I actually never, and here's something that's funny. I never used to look at a resume.
Oh.
When I would go in and interview somebody, like if HR had already screened them and done it and they would pass it to me, I would ask them not to share the resume because I didn't want to be biased. I wanted them to present themselves and tell me who they were. That was on paper. I think for me personally, it comes back to like a vulnerability I saw in myself in my career because I'm a college grad. And back in 2000, college wasn't the popular educational choice. And so as a result, when I would put college, that I was a college grad for a technical school, I was overlooked consistently for a job. So I got crafty and I just stopped putting my education on my resume. And I got this job and I loved the job I had. And then all of a sudden, I was in an interview and they're like, oh, I'm screening this person out. They went to a college. And I was like, but I'm a college grad. No, you're not. I was like, yes, I am. But they were totally shocked I was. And so, because of that insecurity I have in myself, I think I know it's a bias, I carried that bias with me for resumes where I don't necessarily want somebody judged by what's on their paper because we don't know what someone's background was. I grew up, unfortunately, with not a lot. And so my family couldn't afford me to go to university. They barely afforded me going to college. And so as a result, I had to do what I could do with what I had. I look at the collection of experiences they may have had from multiple jobs and automatically pull out going, that's interesting. They probably have the following skill set. Whether their resume states it or not, most of the times they don't. But then I make a bit of assumption that they might have some of these skills and just might not have been able to leverage it. Good example was back in COVID days when all the airline staff got let go. It was like the perfect time to go scooping up airlines because we know we were going to have grumpy clients or customers, and who better to handle grumpy individuals than, flight attendants, right? They deal with it every day. So it was one of those where it's like, oh, that's a totally transferable skill. So I think from a resume, just make sure your resume tells a story. Editors is another one. So if they're an editor and you're looking for someone that's in your digital customer success, go after those editors because you need writers. The new digital customer success are writers. So make sure you have a writer on your team.
So we were just talking about the head of CS role and how, based on where the company wants, but pros and cons with that role. Um, I'm interested about your own career journey. It's not many people, I would say, it's so awesome you can make it up to the COO level. And how do you make it up there? I would like to
Uh,
learn more.
a lot of luck. A lot of luck. If I take a step back, I was a manager for a long time. I was a director for a long time. And I think I was fortunate enough to learn a lot of the foundational skills as being an individual contributor and then a manager and then a director and sit in those roles for a while. And because I was able to sit in those roles for a while and then went through acquisitions with those companies as well, where the companies got bigger, right? And you're dealing with a lot of politics that's there, I think I learned a lot of foundational skills. And then I got to the point where I was like ready to make that leap and then got recruited into the next role. At that role was the pivotal, I'm going to use the word unlocking because sometimes you're going to work with leaders that, you know, unlock you or like are able to kind of pull out some of those skill sets, but then you hit a wall and you don't realize you hit the wall. Then you go to another organization, you find again that leader and they figure out how to really, really unlock you. And I was blessed to have that leader when I moved to a company called eCompliance. And at that point, I was confident in my abilities of both CS at that point, but also was fortunate enough I was going to a company that I already had the domain expertise on too. So I call it like the double whammy, right? Because I knew the space for a long time. And then because I was IC in that space and worked my way up in the career. And then I was also starting like have built and been in CS for a while. So I really knew both. So it wasn't that I had to learn both sides of the industry and then also learn how to be a really good strategic leader. I could just focus on being a strategic leader because I wasn't overwhelmed by having to learn everything else. But then the other fortunate part is I had a humble leader. And that was when I realized I need to work with a specific type of leader that really works well for me. And so in my case, I went in, the leader was very humble. And as a result, was like to create a culture of learning. So failing is celebrate it. Like go try it. Don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness. That type of thing. Like go give it a whirl. Tell me what worked. Tell me what didn't work. And then really start to kind of work on the things that I had constrained myself on in careers, like needing to perform, needing to show up, needing to mask myself. And I realized the term of my true authentic self at that company. And I think as a female leader at that time in my career, where I was predominantly around men in tech, and I had been around men in tech my entire career at that point, didn't know how much I was masking myself, that I was trying to make myself a very specific mold and somewhat successful, but not successful to me. And so as a result, then I constantly was failing myself until I got into that organization. I realized I was not being true to me. And once I was able to be true to me, that's when I took off. That's when my whole trajectory of my career really changed, where I could be my quirky self and say terrible dad jokes, where I could wear a hoodie to a phone interview or an actual in person interview, where my hair doesn't have to be ironed, curled, whatever. I don't have to wear makeup because I don't want to wear makeup. I could talk about running that's there if I want to, and not have to worry about it. I didn't have to be business, all business. I could be kind and direct at the same time, and that could work. So, to answer your question, finding out who my true authentic self was the unlocking point, but working with a leader that allowed that to happen and gave me the space for it to happen and then continue. And so he was the one that helped me get to that VP level. And then from there, unlocked me. He's also the same one that got me to the COO level and where I'm at right now. Leaders go back to leaders, and I'm back with him. And so he bought a new company and came and asked me to join on as the CSO, his COO.
Wow. And it's so nice to hear that relationship with your leader and you continue grow together and have that synergy. You can find this kind of leader, somebody your
Yeah,
mentor for your
ex- exactly. And, you know, all I could say is make sure you're just being true to you. The more you're true to you, the more you will shine. And the more of people seeing you being authentic means you're being real and not trying to be this facade that's out there in the industry. You'll find your place.
oh, and I want to say thank you, Star, for you've been a mentor to many people I talked to actually, and
Oh,
every yeah, a
that's
lot
so
of
lovely to hear.
yeah, I actually talked to a lot of people you managed before, and they say, "Oh, yes, Star was my best mentor, and she helped me to do X and do Y and move up." And I can feel your leadership style is like that. That you're
Oh,
the keyword is unlock, right?
well, we all have talents, right? That's out there. And my goal is I'd love to be able to retire by saying the next gen, who, by the way, the current gen that's out there are ridiculously talented. Oh my gosh, are you all so talented? I can't wait to, when the roles twist and I'm in that learning mode where learning how to do life again with all the new skills that the current generation are bringing to the forefront and bringing to the workplace. Like they've already changed the workplace for the better. Great. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's always new. I'm learning from my kids too.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's it's kind of talk about the team too, and things are happening so fast right now in this, especially this year. How do you keep the morale? That's the internal.
I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I was thinking about like how do you keep morale up? And I was just like, I don't know how I do it. I know that sounds like a cop out of an answer. I think I just try to be real, be fun, be honest, give people space to grow, allow them to own their own corner of the room, if you will, that's there, and create that environment where we're all learning, we're all sharing, we're all celebrating the love, we're all talking about what we're working on well, and then being transparent as an organization. I think organizations are a little too behind the door, and so you don't know if the organization is doing well because you're only being served what they choose to tell you. I'm 100% transparent. I will say whether like, hey, cash flows is this, or like, hey, we've got these cool accounts that just came in and like we're really rocking it. We're doing well. I think it's like just being truly transparent as much as we possibly can is how you build morale. And if you're having a crappy day, it's okay to say you're having a crappy day. If you need a mental health day and you're a leader, talk about it. It's okay to talk about it. We're all human. And if we can't be human first or people first and be in the business of building people leaders, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know why we go to work then at the end of the day. And so that's kind of how I keep, I guess, morale up is just trying to be real, trying to be honest, authentic, build great work environments where people actually want to work there, not because they have to, because of, hey, I got a mortgage to pay. It's because they're actually still learning something. And I think the other one that is probably unorthodox, but I'm a big fan of having, I'm going to use the word, I'm going to be harsh, but I don't mean it this way. Sometimes you got to pick people out of your organization. What I mean by that is when you have that teenager or that really like adult that's living in your basement or in their room and they're 20 or some odd year old and you want to kick them out of the nest to go bloom. Some organizations, we all have that. We have that employee. They've already learned everything they possibly can from you, but you're holding them on because you're afraid of losing them. But really, what you're doing is you're stumping their growth. And so I'm happy to talk to employees and say, it's time for you to leave. Not because I want them to leave. I don't want them to leave. It's going to suck without them, really suck without them. But recognizing if I keep them, I'm being selfish. I'm holding them back. They could be out finding that next leader that's going to help them really grow and take them to that next level. So that's another thing I tend to do is I don't mind kicking those nesters out because not because I don't want them, because I truly respect where they're at in their career and I want them to excel. And if they stay with me, they won't.
Yeah, that's amazing about recognizing where they should be growing.
Yeah.
And yeah, time to fly, baby bird.
Exactly. Yeah, time to leave the house, man. Get out.
Or they can maybe it's a time for the company to grow so they can grow together. I
Oh,
don't know.
oh, that's true. That's true. Like if there's other roles and they can grow into, I'll totally take advantage of that. But I mean, if there really is nowhere else for them to grow, and they're wanting to stay in that, like grow, especially if they're growing in leadership role and there's already people there and they're going to have to wait like a specific time. Sometimes it's time to help them
Mhm.
find the next gig.
And you've been really helpful. I see you've been sharing a lot of job posts on your LinkedIn as well and helping people recognize you've been yeah, and
The,
this job
the,
market.
the
Yeah.
job market is very interesting today. Really is.
Let's talk about another interesting thing. We
Sure.
talked so what's happening in the CS space? The biggest news is actually Tatango and Catalyst. They merged together. What do you think is happening?
I think it's so fast. The thing I really loved about it was the throwdown. I'm coming after you, game site, and I thought that was just hilarious to come to play. Even though Tatanga was generally always competing with Gainsight generally, so I thought it was interesting. The I have more questions than anything else. I think it's interesting to watch. It's not surprising that consolidation is happening in the market today. That's there just because there's a lot of tech that's out there, right? And so if you can merge in order to go after more market share, great, because the only way to grow market share sometimes is through acquisition. And that might be a play for both of them that's there. But what the question I have that's out there is Gainsight has been also growing through acquisition, right? So they bought an educational arm, they have product analytics arm, and then of course their success management that platform or arm itself. And so they've already figured out that they've already hit a certain saturation in enterprise. And so what they needed to do is, build some breadth to some of the depth they already had. But what's fascinating about Tatango and Gainsight is I don't know the play yet, right? Like, are they going to go after true enterprise? Or because Catalyst kind of was in that mid market low or top of SMB stage. And so right now there's a lot of SMB companies out there and they need tech too. And
Yeah.
so are they going after that market to disrupt that market? So will they be, you know, if I will, the gain sites of SMB and mid market? Because Gainsight is playing in the mid market space, but um, definitely not playing too much in the SMB space. So I'm interested. Where are they going with this? Right? Like, and which product prevails?
Yeah,
Catalyst or to Tango?
I'm not too
Or
sure. Yeah,
my
but
hypothesis is they bought they bought engineers is my hypothesis.
I do follow a couple Catalyst people, and
Yeah.
they seem it's one thing that really strikes my mind is a CRO post. Have you seen that one
Yeah.
from
I
Mark?
haven't read it, but I saw it being the one by Mark, yes.
The one by Mark.
Um yeah,
The reason
but
why
he's
he
not
left.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said that as much as he loved CS, he was very let's say tired of
Hmm.
explaining the importance of CS to CEOs,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why he left. Yeah. Do you feel that? I think at the beginning of our conversation, is about where do you play CS? Where do you play?
Yeah, it's a tough one because it it's amazing. CS has evolved quite a bit, right? Like over the last decade. And I think some CEOs either get it or they don't. But there's still a lot of legacy CEOs that's been around since the 90s and 80s and into these senior roles that just truly don't get CS other than the example I gave earlier of, are you a protector of the money, right? So your retention, but not necessarily, providing actual true value to clients. So I think yes, there's a lot of CEOs that don't get it. There's a lot of leadership teams. There's a lot of CROs that don't get it either. That's so frustrating because sales. I love my friends in sales. They've been around for a long time. They're really good allies when you have good allies. But there's also sales organizations where it's the selfish play. What's in it for me, right? And there's a quote that's usually used in sales is you hit the beginning of the month or beginning of the quarter, and it's like, what have you done for me today? Right? Because they go back to zero. Or another common phrase is, well, we keep the lights on. And so I think with that, there is still a lot of education that needs to happen on the market of what is customer success. But I think we need to be honest ourselves as CS leaders. We also need to be a bit more articulate of what we are doing because we bounce around a little bit because we're still new. We're still new, still trying to figure it out. So it is hard if you can't grasp the concepts. And if we as leaders that's been in the space also still can't truly articulate what it is, then why do we think they should know too?
So, last question. What is CS to you, Star?
Hmm. Well, that's a good question. And then I have to jet to another meeting to talk to a client. But nonetheless, C- CS to me is a philosophy. It's not a discipline, and I think that's where there's been this like friction of I'm not a discipline meaning I'm a department. I'm a philosophy. It's a company-wide philosophy that you have, and it's ingrained in everything you do. When we talk about competencies, a competency should be something that's related to the client. Your North Star of your company is not NRR. Oh my gosh, that metric drives me crazy. When companies say your North Star of your company should be NRR. No, what you essentially just replaced is ARR with another metric number. What is the key outcome? I'm getting on the soapbox for a while. What is the key outcome for your client? That's your North Star. If your client is successful, your money will come. The money will come is like the outcome of you focusing on this other target, not, chasing a revenue number. If you're chasing a revenue number, you're going to have the antics that happens in sales. You're going to have this org where everybody's chasing money and nobody's really solving the problem for a client or a customer. And so I think like for me, it's a philosophy. Everyone in the organization needs to be aligned on how they are actually helping the client or customer. We call them clients, so I keep switching back and forth. How the customers are getting value and what problem you're truly solving. If the organization is not solving that, then that's the problem. It's not because, hey, our target's too low or target's too short or our product's not doing this or like it's really is making sure everyone needs to be aligned on what you're trying to solve as an organization. Do you solve it? Be honest. Talk to your clients. If your CEO is not talking to your clients on a regular basis, cannot articulate the win loss directly because they're talking to them, then your CEO is not customer obsessed. They're not customer focused. All they're focused on is, $1 in is $1 out, which means they probably have a number of NRR. I'm probably not going to be popular after this podcast.
I didn't ask you about
So,
NPS, so
pardon me.
I didn't ask you about NPS, so
Oh
you're
yeah,
safe.
don't get me involved in that one either. I actually think NPS has a place though. Like I think NRR has a place too. It's just not a North Star metric, right?
Okay.
It's a lagging indicator. Why are we using a lagging indicator as a North Star for a company? It blows my mind.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much, Star. I know you need to head out soon.
Thanks
Do
for having me. Sorry I got so passionate and on my soapbox so many times, but this is a topic I could talk about a long time.
Yeah, I would love to have you back and we can continue. I know you have to go, but thank you so much, Star.
No
Can I just
problem.
ask one last question? If you have one
Yeah.
book to recommend, what would that be?
Oh, so there's two books I would recommend. One, as most some of you might know, I'm an ultra runner, and love to go get lost in the forest to run like 100K or so. And so one book I read that blew my mind was Training for the Uphill Athlete. Blew my mind in how to train for ultra. So nice little read there. For those of you that might not be runners, it might not be crazy like I am, then First Lie wins. I enjoyed it. It was
Okay,
great.
I'll check those out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your
No
time,
problem.
Star.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Bye.